Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Emma Lagerlow. Emma wears a number of hats. She's a wife, mum to 4 children, 3 of whom have reached the teenage years, and she currently works as a wealth and mindset coach. During our conversation, we talk about Emma's 25-year corporate career, including over 10 years in finance and banking, her early menopause at the age of 45, her dreams of becoming a published author, and how growing older has led her to new ways of self-care. Importantly, Emma has been able to use her skills and her knowledge gained during the years in the corporate world to create her Wealth Mastery Coaching program, which allows her to support women to transform their worth, wealth, and well-being, all which are such important areas of every woman's life. She also supports women through her life coaching work to help them create fulfilling and abundant lives. All links to the resources and ways to connect with Emma can be found in the show notes. This is a conversation that touches on so many topics that unite all women, and I know that there's going to be something for everyone in our chat. And as always, I'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review and share this podcast so it can reach others. Enjoy. Big welcome to you, Emma, for coming onto the podcast today. I'm so grateful that you're here to talk to us.
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, thank you so much. I feel it was lovely to get your invitation to come on and be a guest. And yeah, it's been wonderful. I think we were just talking before about how we met probably a couple of years ago now when we were both really starting to get into our businesses. And here we are.
That's it. And they're all evolving. That's the other thing that we were talking about too, how the business changes and evolves over time, just like we do as women. So it's wonderful to see how each other is changing and what sort of area you're then starting to get into.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, getting to know you even more.
Exactly.
Yeah, wonderful. Even listening to your podcast. So you're doing a wonderful job with it. Congratulations.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much. Well, what we're going to do today is talk about the younger Emma and then go through just the progress of how you have evolved as a woman and the sorts of work that you're doing now and how you're helping other women in a certain area. So Emma, tell us about the younger Emma, what she dreamed of, where she was living, and what she thought maybe her future was going to look like.
Sure. Okay. So I guess there's so many different versions of the younger, isn't there?
Yeah.
But I was born in the south of Sydney and have spent most of my life here. I did a little bit of travel in my early 20s. I went overseas backpacking. But the younger Emma that grew up in Sydney, and I think I was always in a rush. I just remember always just wanting to be an adult because then I could do what I wanted to do. So that was a bit of a memory. And then I really wanted to be a journalist as I was sort of getting to the end of my high school years. And yeah, I loved writing and I did some work experience at a television station. I wanted a newsreader actually was what I pictured in my mind. But then I think this rushing to get through life a little bit got in the way and it felt like that was going to be a long game. And so then I ended up doing a marketing degree, and then it led to a sort of a 20-year corporate career, which was great. And it did allow me to travel. Like I worked in London and all of that with that corporate experience. So I have no regrets at all. But I think now I'm a little bit coming full circle in that had this hankering to write a book is on my bucket list, and it still is. And so it's definitely getting closer and I'm moving more in the right direction to get to that point.
That's exciting because you've got decades ahead of you, so there's plenty of time to write that bestseller. Are you thinking of a non-fiction or a fiction book? What was sort of the idea that you've got behind your book?
Yeah, well, in my younger years, I did actually start writing a book, which I probably got about halfway through, and it was really based on, I loved Danielle Steele and all of those romances and fictions and all that idealism. But now I feel like it's more grounded and it would be a non-fiction. And I think it's more so around finding your worth as a human, really, but particularly as a woman, and shedding all of those identities that you carry through your life, and then to come out to be, I guess, your most authentic self, which will hopefully lead to more wealth and abundance in all areas of your life.
Yeah, we're constantly a work in progress, aren't we? Because even if you look back at where you were, like, and we were doing that only 2 years ago when we first came across each other, how much things have changed in our lives and where we've become. And you know, sometimes things have been great and others not so good, but that all shapes the person that you do finally become.
Yeah, definitely. The lessons that you learn in some of those not great moments really do shape you to be a better version of yourself, hopefully.
Absolutely. I mean, life can't be all sparkling all the time, can it? You need those moments of adversity to actually get through them, prove that you can do the hard things, and that sort of sets you up for the next thing that might come your way.
Certainly. And appreciate then the good things as well. And you have some, dips along the way. And then when your life, you get through it and you can really appreciate that normal life even.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't get to our age now. You're in your late 40s and I'm in my mid 50s. You can't get to this age without having those big bumps along the way. And my favorite quote is, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. It's just that, things are going to come your way. It's riding them at the time. So it's hanging on for grim death sometimes. And otherwise you're just sailing. It can be smooth sailing, but just to get
certainly.
there.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, well, it's a great one. It reminds you when I'm having a hard time, there's going to be calmer waves coming your way soon. So it is a handy one to have. Now, you mentioned that in your younger years you worked in corporate. So what sort of things were you doing during that time in that job or those jobs?
So I worked in banking and finance for 10 years of that time. And so I was working in foreign exchange, in transactional banking, in equities, all of that. And so I think that is also, shaped a little bit of the coaching slant that I've taken on now. But it was great. I mean, it took me to London and I flew to New York and I was in Tampa. And so I had some amazing experiences in the lead up until I started having kids. And that's when I took my foot off the pedal and took some time out and had 4 children.
Wow.
So I did sort of take I had a couple of small businesses at that time. It just sort of kept me interested, but nothing really. It was more about sort of that child rearing at that point. And then I got back into corporate and found a job that was local in marketing. And so then I was working for a pharmaceutical business and really sort of being more traditional marketing, whereas in the finance it was trading and then more sales related. So but it was great. I've got some really fond memories of those years, and they have really helped to grow the wealth of our family and been some amazing experiences for me as well.
And was your husband in a similar sort of a role that together you could be in these types of jobs?
Yeah, so he's a stockbroker and has been forever. Actually, when we first went overseas, because we met when I was 17, so we were quite young. He's 3 years older than me. But we went overseas, and that's when he got more into that stockbroking side of things. He'd done an accounting degree, and I mean, he might beg to differ that it was a good decision, but because it's quite a stressful role and can be quite demanding when you're doing it. But it has allowed us, I guess, to sort of travel on the same plane as we've gone through life a little bit. And then his role now has been great to bring a lot of wealth and abundance into our lives, so I'm very grateful to him for that.
Yes. Yep. And are your children got any aspirations to go into that sector as well, having had mum and dad both in there?
Yeah. Well, interesting you say, because my son has just graduated from high school and he is studying for business. So he's actually just left to go down to uni, and he's doing a business degree, and he's thinking finance, but the first year you do all the subjects. So I know we're even saying do accounting, because then you could have a small business for yourself, which in hindsight, it's great to have a business. I think that then you can be a little bit more of your own boss in life. And so it's going to be up to him. He might enjoy and be wooed by the big lights of that stockbroking sort of career path, but I guess, wisdom and time and experience. Now we see a lot of our friends that are builders or accountants, and they've got their own businesses and they're only working 3 days a week, and they have a lot more freedom and time on their hands. So we'll see where he ends up.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because my he went into a dual business laws degree with the whole idea, the bright starry eyes of a corporate living a corporate life and climbing a ladder and all this sort of thing. And he got a couple of years into his degree and he just went, that's not what I'm finding attractive at all. And he's just taken this big step back away from that and pursuing other studies in a completely different area, hoping to be in a completely different world, because it can burn out. So maybe your son's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of those different aspects of whether you're in corporate or whether you're in smaller business.
Yes, yeah. But he will choose his own path, whatever that is, and I hope he's happy. I know already though he's like a bit shocked by how much textbooks are costing and all of that. I'm like, well, you really need to want to do it. It's not, and even the HEX debt, that what we have in Australia at the end of your degree, you have to make sure that it's something that you really want to do because it's expensive as well. So yeah, we'll see how he goes, but so far so good.
It's interesting, isn't it, as a parent, watching your children go through those different stages and imagining, when they're really little, you imagine, what on earth are they going to do? And then as they get older, they start to gravitate towards a certain area or a profession. And and then they become young adults, like you're finding now with your son. Both of mine my children are at this point in time of the recording at 23 and almost 22. And you go, yeah, it's interesting. What's going to be in the next 5-10 years ahead for them? It's such an unknown, isn't it? But it's exciting as a parent.
It is, yeah. And they're all so different. It's crazy to think.
For poor children, it definitely would be. You would really notice that.
Yes, I am. Yeah. So he's super academic, and then my two middle girls are more probably practically minded. Yeah. And then, so maybe childcare or travel or something. And then my little one is super sporty right now. So she wants to be a pro surfer, but we'll see what happens with that.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So you're a wife, and you mentioned that you met your husband when you were 17, and you've recently celebrated your 22nd wedding anniversary. So congratulations there.
Thank you. Yes.
So how are you finding this whole phase? We sort of touched on it a little bit then of motherhood, because it is different. And I know that you decided to have when we first met, you were really working with mums who are in the phase of the teenage years. So how have you found that phase to be and continue to be?
I have found that phase to be quite challenging. I know I was even a challenging teenager. My mum actually said to me, I hope you have daughters. And then I had 3. So if that is karma, then I think I've been well served in that area. But it is a hard phase because they are just becoming their own people, and so they're exploring, testing boundaries, and they're seeking independence, and they don't need you, but then they do need you, especially when they want you to pick them up or drop them off somewhere. And so it's just a different time of life. And that's why I started initially. It was a blog for mums who are raising tweens and teens, because I really felt like there was even a bit of a disconnect in the level of support for mums of kids of that age group, because the kids are at high school, you're not at the school gate, you're not at mothers groups, and then with the kids testing boundaries, and you might be secretly thinking, oh my goodness, is this normal? And where's this going to end? They're sort of acting out and things like that. So I wanted to sort of be a voice to normalize that our kids are going to do things that we might not agree with as they are growing into adulthood. And it was great. But as I've morphed, I've realized, and my business has grown, I first of all realized that I was attracting people from all walks of life, and saying I was for mums was really limiting me. And then I think it's nice now to not be so tied up. Like, I think I'm finding more of my own identity as well on this journey. And it's not just being the mum. There's a lot more to me as well. And it's even nice, to not be all wrapped up in that. Even the stigma, I think, if my kids do something and I feel like I'm this voice for the mums of teens, that, I had this more pressure even on myself. And so I'm a full advocate for mums who are raising teens and for the teens and all of that. But it's been nice for me to sort of grow and develop on this journey as well.
Yeah, as that's a couple of things that we can talk about from what you just said. So one of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking was as a parent, you see your children and they particularly when they're teenagers and they're wanting to test boundaries and they're wanting to explore, and you need to, it's almost like a constant juggle that I found personally, and talking to some of my friends, where you've got the umbilical cord that you let it out a little bit and then you rein them back in, and then you let out that little bit more, and they're wanting to sever it, and then they, the odd time where they might accidentally sever and then they need to come back to the fold. It's hard to sometimes watch, but you need to let your kids make some mistakes as well, because that's how they learn, and that's how they learn that resiliency. And coming from having been a teacher for a number of decades, I could see the difference in the children who were allowed to make mistakes and the children who were constantly mollycoddled to not make mistakes, and that whole fear that they've got to get it all right, and mum will be there to pick it up before it problems start. So it's a really interesting phase too.
I think you're right, it's really important that they can make those mistakes to build the resilience and see the consequences of the actions a little bit. So that's probably a good way for them to learn, but it's really hard as well because of course you love them and want to protect them and shield them, but so it's
that importance of having something, and as your children do get older, and we'll touch on a bit of that now, is as you said, find something that you enjoy as well, because when the children leave, for some parents, sometimes children just keep on staying and living in your house, but for a number of women whose whole work and whole sense of worth and identity is in their children, when they leave, they are totally lost. The empty nest is certainly real. I've experienced it, but I suppose I always had something else that I was doing at the same time to help me.
I think that's so important. And that's like, I think even my business as it's grown, it's been my personal, like I've said, journey a few times, but of then realizing that I needed to prioritize self-care to be show up as a better version of myself, for my kids as well. And that part of that is really, is having that purpose, rather than getting to that point where they've all left and all of a sudden you're just lost and floundering and you don't have that sense of purpose. And it can be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be a massive career or starting a business. Maybe it's about getting fit and healthy, or volunteering, or, there's so many ways that you can carve out your own interests as well. So it can look like however it wants to look for you, but you need to listen to what's coming up for you and then follow that path.
Absolutely. And you've got more of that time and space, and usually energy too, because they don't require as much time, and they don't require as much energy, and they don't take up as much space once they start doing their own thing, and you're not needed as much anymore. So that's really valuable advice. And I just know that some of the women that I come across, both as friends of mine and also just in what I'm doing now, some do struggle with that and finding themselves, and it is a journey. I use that word as well, and I think it can be an overused term, and people their eyes almost can roll in the back of their heads, but there is it is a change, and we do morph into different things.
Definitely.
So you mentioned earlier that you loved writing, and the writing the novel, and you did some blogging, so that's really interesting, that connection that you had there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think it was dipping my toe in the water back into, getting used to the writing, and even the blog, I guess, was my marketing background, and thinking that if I get a few fans and then I write a book, at least a few people will buy the book. So, but then it's just grown. I was listening to a lot of Melissa Ambrosini at the time, and I don't know if you've listened to her. I mean, she's a little bit younger than us, but she just really inspired me at the time with her coaching and all of that. And she started blogging. I think she was writing a blog every single day. And I mean, that's a little bit too much for me with a busy life to come up with a new blog every day. But it's been a real expander for me to see what's possible to be able to actually create a life and a going concern from a blog.
Do you still write much? Do you have the blog that's continuing now that you write?
Yes. Yeah, so I do. So that's on Mama's Day, which was the website. I have done some rebranding, but I just haven't quite got to the website to call that Emma Lagerlow yet.
Yes.
And so that probably has made me maybe not do quite as much at the moment, but that's a work in progress. And I do love writing, and I need to remember, like, sometimes we get so distracted by all the shiny objects, and we forget about, what really started us in the first place. But this year I've really said I'm going to start writing that book. And so I will be writing a few more blogs. I also write for some different, I'm affiliated with a studio and a platform called TrueWoo. And so I do a few blogs for them. But I really love writing. There is nothing like it when you got hit by some inspiration and you just really want to write about it. And it feels so incredible. So it's great. I probably just do that in my journal now in the mornings.
Yeah. So you're a big journaler?
Yeah. So the last few years, I've always kept a diary. That's probably something I probably should have talked about when I was growing up. It was, you get your little diary that for the year and you'd write every day, what you did. But the last few years I picked it up again, and it has been really cathartic for me. I meditate as well. I've got a little morning routine where I meditate. I use the Insight Timer app, and depending on how much time, you could do like a 1-minute meditation or 20 minutes if you've got time to laze around a little bit more. And then I write 1 page in a journal. And then my daughter, actually, my littlest one, bought me this great gratitude journal by Lisa Messenger. And it really is quite comprehensive, and it has lots of questions like rating your day out of 10 in the morning and the night. And that has been really good. Like, what's my focus for the day? And then at the end of the day, what have I been go of? And so it's, it's good. So it can take maybe 10 minutes, but it's just a great way for me to start the day and get everything out that might be going on inside, which can be a lot when there's teenagers around.
Yes. So a morning ritual is so important. That's something that I really like to, I've got for myself going. I've got a fairly extensive one now, but that's just been adding little things on over a long period of time. And in the membership that I've got with the ladies that I work with, that's one of the things that they all start with, just implementing one little thing and then add on to another, because it sets up your day so well, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does. It just clears your mind, I think. It grounds you, and the gratitude in particular, I think, you can sometimes be thinking that if you're in a slump and nothing's great, but there's, always so much to be grateful for. And it just gives you that perspective. So a morning routine I feel like it's really been one of the most transformational things for me, to really set me on the path that I'm on, and to keep growing my confidence and knowing myself better, and being more present, and for my family.
Yep, same. And Emma, you've got three daughters, and so the hormones in your house plus your own. And if you don't mind me sharing that you're a woman who went through menopause earlier at 45. You reached menopause, so you're postmenopausal now. How did you go with that while you've got young teenage girls in the house? I mean, that must have just been an interesting time.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, I suppose, but I wasn't overly aware of it. And I think being of a younger age, and I also had a IUD because we didn't want to have any more children, which then suppresses the usual cycle. So I wasn't really truly aware. I know I was sitting in meetings at work, and I'd get a hot flush and take my cardigan off, and then it would pass and I'd put it back on. So I was thinking maybe something a little bit was going on, but I guess I was fairly lucky that the symptoms weren't overly aggressive for me. And then it was more even just then I went to the doctor to get the IUD, so it was time for it. And my husband had a vasectomy. Hopefully this isn't too much information for everyone. And they needed to have an ultrasound to remove it. And then they had a look at my ovaries, and they said, "Are you trying to have a baby?" And so I was like, "Oh my goodness, no, I've got 4, like, no." And then I said, "Oh, but why are you saying that?" And they said, there's not many eggs left. And so I probably was only about 42 then. And so then that was the first sort of trigger to think, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then all the things that go with that as well, of like feeling, oh, wow, I'm getting older. And but then I did get a few more periods. But then 44, like I had my last one. So by 45, I was in menopause, and my doctor had called to tell me that as well. And so I probably was a little bit erratic at the time, but it wasn't a huge thing it was sort of like, I'm in menopause, and, everyone look out.
I know it's experienced so differently, isn't it, on how women's bodies react to just the declining in the hormones. And we were talking again previous to hitting the record button, how Emma at 45 is postmenopause, and me at 55 is still very much in the far away from. I've got at least 56 before I reach menopause. So just how different we can all be, and it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? For something that every woman goes through, is such different realities that we all have.
And I think that's important to talk about a little bit as well, because I mean, I did feel abnormal, to be honest, and it was whether I really did want to share about it, but I'm fine. And I think actually going through menopause brings wisdom as well, and not caring so much what other people think. And so there's that to be grateful for. And and it does. I mean, I was listening, I think, even to your podcast, and they were saying that some women are getting symptoms in their mid-30s.
Yes.
And rather than us burying our heads in the sand and not realizing, like, why are we feeling how we're feeling, I think it's good to bring this more, shed light on it, so that people can embrace it and navigate it more easily.
Well, it's normalizing a conversation of something that is completely normal, because every woman will go through it. Yet it's only now that it's starting to become probably not as, for some women, embarrassing, or it's a secret's women's business. You didn't really know. And even with the women I work with, well, I didn't know about that. How come we're not talking about it? That's one of the most common things. How come we don't know about this? And it's only now, and it'll happen when we start to make it a normal part of conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was out on the weekend and talking about it, and people are really interested. And I think so many people are walking around worried, because there's so many symptoms that you can have. And so if it was more normal, and it would help people to not keep them up at night, even though that's absolutely another one of the symptoms.
Just another. You were saying, there's 20% of women by the age of 40 are showing signs of perimenopause. So they've got those symptoms already. So it's happening to younger women, and they need to know what to look for, how to support their body through it. So you're supporting your body, you were talking about before, just with a morning ritual that you've set up, and you've got that meditation going. What other sorts of things do you do to support your health and your wellness?
So exercise is big as well. Like, I try to do something around 4 times a week. I do a bit of walking, and then I do personal training with my daughter, actually. And so that is great for the strength training. And then I'll try and go with a friend or on my own or something as well, because I know strength training is really important for bone health, particularly if you do go through menopause earlier, that you want to try and ward off osteoporosis and things like that. So, and I've done strength training forever, and I really enjoy it. I mean, it's a great way to burn energy longer than just doing cardio. So and keep yourself sort of fit and toned. And that's why I also like to, it hasn't really changed my body a lot, I don't feel, going through menopause. And that's another big fear I think women feel, that they're going to hold on to fat and everything. I mean, maybe I've adjusted my diet a little bit because my metabolism probably isn't as fast, but I feel like it hasn't really, it's not something to be so afraid of. That's probably the message that I would really love to share. And if we do continue to look after ourselves, and I mean, exercise is good for mental health regardless of anything else. So to continue on those pathways, then you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Focusing on your health and wellness when you get to the middle of life is so important, because it'll set you up for the years to come as well. Not only do you feel great in the moment and in the short term, it's just setting yourself up for the longer term. And that strength training is key, because to prevent the osteoporosis from happening. I was osteopenic, actually. Osteoporosis runs in my family. So I had the early signs with the bone scans that I actually was in the early stages, known as osteopenia. And I was able to reverse it through strength training.
Wow.
And which was, so ladies, make sure you do. And as well, it increases, it stops something called sarcopenia. So your muscles do start to waste as you get older. And so by doing strength training, you're not only strengthening your bones, but you're maintaining, and in many cases for women, because it changes as they get older, they're building muscle. And that can then help you with increasing the ability for you to, metabolize your food a lot faster, so you're not putting on weight. So it's, there's a lot of things that can work together as you get older that you need to be aware of. The gold star for you.
Yeah, well, I've done it forever. I can't imagine not really doing it. I mean, maybe I was doing step and things like that when I was younger, but for the last 20 years probably I've been doing strength training, and it was even, we were worried when in the early years of, turning into muscle men or whatever, but it's not at all now, and it just helps you have that sort of leaner physique, and then you do burn fat and your energy better, and it's easier on your joints and all of that, I think. So it's been a great addition to my life, and I can't imagine not having it.
No. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that and being honest about your reproductive life with
Yeah.
sport.
Well, thank goodness I did have these 4 children, although sometimes maybe but that's another thing is, it is good to not wait too long, because maybe if I was 42 and I was just trying to have a baby, then it might have been really difficult for me. So I feel lucky that I did
Absolutely
make hay while the sun shined.
Yes, so to speak. Yes. Now, Emma, most recently your work has expanded into the area of women's not health but wealth, and their mindset around money. So this is such an important topic for women, and I'm loving that we're going to be talking about this now. So can you tell us more about exactly what you do in your line of business and the reason behind why you decided to go down that path?
Probably what really led me is maybe even listening to like people around me that didn't have a lot of like control of the finances, and how, or even an idea of what was going on, and how their lives were not functioning as maybe as smoothly, or they didn't have as much just peace of mind, even because they weren't really aware of it. And I grew up, my mum was the budgeter in our household, and at that point, like, she would have money for different things in different compartments of her wallet, but there was petrol money, and there was food money, and holiday money, and all of that. And so I think she was a really great role model for me to see what it was like. And so it just naturally, I guess, came to me that I was the budgeter in our family as we began. And I had spreadsheets for all the different things. We were going on a holiday, or we were doing a renovation or whatever. Like, if you saw my actual spreadsheet, I think there's like 20 tabs or something.
Oh, wow.
Parties even, and and all of that. And so, and then the banking and finance really helped me with the investment side of things, and understanding that terminology, and feeling comfortable with that. Even my risk tolerance was probably even a little bit more so than my husband. And I was always the one that was like, let's buy that house, and now let's buy that house. And it has held us in good stead now, because, it capitally appreciates. And so it has grown like the equity that we have. And so I just think it's come naturally to me, but I could see it didn't for everyone. And ultimately, though, I just think that knowledge is power. And by, knowing exactly sort of what, or a roundabout way where our finances are, rather than, again, keeping you up at night thinking, can I afford that? Or how am I going to pay that bill? Really, to know exactly how it looks is so important, and then can give us that choice and opportunity, or whatever, to be able to make decisions on our life, and then to also create true wealth in our life for all those other areas. Exercise and relationships and all of that. I think to have a good relationship with money is really fundamental to be able to enjoy everything in your life. And so I just thought I'd bring all that practical knowledge and experience together. And I started just with my budget that I use, which is really comprehensive, and it's free on my website, or on my Instagram, and you can just download that. And as I said, comprehensive. I've got 4 kids, so I've tried to think of everything, because that was another thing with some of the budgets that I found. They were so high level, but you get to the end of the month and think, well, that didn't add up. How come it didn't add up? And then you forget about the gifts and the subscriptions and the apps. Yes. And so I've tried to capture all of that, so you get a really good understanding of where you stand. And then you can move it around. And if there's not enough money, then I like to even talk about the big and the small. We say we're going to start saving money. We're not going to have those coffees, but the coffee might bring you a lot of joy if you're busy and you're getting the kids off to school, getting to work. You finally sit down, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel. Whereas it could be, say, a car loan. And when you look at it and you think, wow, that's like 20% of our outgoings. And is that vehicle really worth that sacrifice that we're having to make, or that losing that peace of mind, or that safety and security? And so you can really start to make those choices and grow your wealth. And then when you do, then we have so many more opportunities of what we want to do with our lives. And my life, for instance, and yours, and I'm sure that wealth has had a say in being able to have that freedom to go and start a business and do something different from.
Yeah. It's money and education. It's when you've got those two things, either one of them, it just brings choice. With the more educational opportunities, it's choice.
Yeah.
With the more, with money, it comes with that as choice. And then that comes, Emma, with the responsibility. So for many women, and particularly when you're getting into women who are probably in their 50s, 60s and beyond, but when we think about marriage breakdowns, sometimes the superannuation differences between men and women, there is still that disparity, isn't there, between men and women. And for women to learn on how they can become more confident with their money and how they can look after their money is so very, very important.
Without a doubt. Like I see, that there are some relationships that the partner has no idea what's happening with the money, and you could be open to a decision that's made that could be detrimental, or a marriage breakdown, and then they have no idea. I mean, I took out really 10 years from my career when I had my kids, and then even when I went back, I was going back only 30 days a week. So my super is definitely not as big as my husband's. And if you don't know what is happening, then if the relationship does decline and you go separate ways, then it might not be fair in how things are divided. And so then, you might be left struggling. And that even can, I think, keep people in the relationship as well if they're not overly happy, because they're just unsure about how they're going to do it on their own. And so if I can even encourage, help people just to have a bit more of a say and an understanding and that financial knowledge and literacy, then we'll have more choice if they want to make a different life choice.
Yeah. So you don't give financial advice per se on buy this stock, buy that stock. So just so people are clear, it's more general education with regards to money, different terms, and you're talking about the mindset on how to start looking at money.
So first of all, we so it's a 4-week coaching program, and first of all, I do some journaling exercises on your money mindset, and I think that's really important to understand whether you have scarcity money mindset bias, or there's never enough money, that money's evil, and it can be.
And we grow up with those, don't we? I remember money doesn't grow on trees, and that's those are the sayings that you sometimes hear, and that stays with you because that's what you learn.
Totally. So it all stays with you. And then we go into the nuts and bolts of setting up your budgets and your systems. And then I do a module on financial education. So that's just the terminology. Because when we hear EFT and we're like, what is that? Or, cryptocurrency. And so just high level, but just to try and take some of that confusion, but then also talking about the benefits and the risk tolerance levels for each of those. And so you can start to go, oh, well, maybe property would be better for me, or an EFT could be good, and long-term and short-term. And just general knowledge, which I wish that they taught a little bit more in schools. Actually, I think it would be great, or taught budgeting as well in schools. I think that would be a great subject to armor our kids with. And then at the end, it's just about how to stay motivated. So looking at your long financial goals and talking about how money in the hands of women is a really good thing, and how when you do have money that you can, if you want to spend money on solar panels, for instance, so that it's better for the environment. And it really, just trying to create that motivation so that, it's something you really want to do.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a life skill, that continuum for people. Some people are really well skilled up, and others are sort of at the lower end or in between. So it's a great one for you to work on. How are you hoping that the business will evolve then? Have you got dreams for what you would love it to become, or is it at the early stages, so you haven't quite got that far yet?
Yeah, I still feel like I'm sort of tiptoeing through the different areas. I mean, I really love talking about money, but I think ultimately it's really about worthiness, is where I really see that, if we feel like we're worthy of time, of upholding our boundaries, of having money and all of that. And that's where, just to create an abundant life. So I think wealth is definitely, and money is one pillar of that, but there's so many pillars. I mean, it's self-care and on all of that. So, I mean, I do my coaching. I'm also studying at the moment Resolve Beyond Neurology, which is based on muscle testing. And that is really interesting to me, of really trying to get to the heart of what people's like limiting beliefs are, what's holding them back. So yeah, we'll watch that space, because I think that that really is an incredible healing modality that, you know, you can see what might be, yeah, stopping people from reaching their full potential and helping them that way. So I think people are so busy beating themselves up and talking negatively and looking at like what isn't their shadow and all of that, rather than seeing what is actually good. And the more we can shine that light on what's good in people, then they'll be a better version of themselves, and that will create that positive ripple effect in the world. So
Right. Yeah, agree entirely. And has growing older shaped that current thinking for you, or is that something that's evolved as you've become older?
yeah, I feel like I've always been someone who like loves talking about people's problems and helping them and that type of thing. But I was probably, yeah, more just running my own race, and then, you know, the mum and on autopilot and all of that. And since going through menopause probably, and even like the pandemic was really a time that was like the light bulb moment, which has really now coincided, I think, with that menopause as well for me a couple of years ago, when life slowed, and I really had that moment to think, am I doing what I really want to do in my life? And yeah, I realized I wasn't, that I like a good day was ticking all the boxes. Yeah, that I got all my chores done, you know, the washing was online, it's folded away. And it's like, that was a good day, but it's not fulfilling. That wasn't fulfilling for me. And so I think that, yeah, wisdom is helping me to see what is really lighting me up in life, and then having the confidence to go for it as well. So
yeah,
it probably has changed.
it's interesting. A number of women that I've spoken to on the podcast, it was that pandemic time, that staying at home, that just made them really have a deep dive and think about where they wanted their life to go, and are they happy with that direction. And it's just interesting to see how that pause has affected lots of people in many different ways.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think for me, it's really about the legacy that I would like to leave as well. As you get older, you start to think about that, and if I can, yeah, inspire my kids, but if I can inspire other people as well, just to, because we've only got one life, and you want to make the very most of it you possibly can. And
For sure.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what it's about for me.
Yeah. And it's great having these sort of positive conversations, because that you know, as you said, you've got one life, and it's if not now, when. So you've really got to, you can keep just letting things slide and go along, or you can just start to take that one little step in a different direction to get you to a completely different space. And you know, that one step will lead to the next step, will lead to the next step, will lead to the next step. And it's so important to see others doing that as well at this stage of life. So is there anyone that you see as role models in this area?
Well, as I talked a little bit about Melissa Ambrosini, that I think that she's great. I mean, she's younger, but she's doing, a lot of the things that really inspire me. But then there's just authors that I love, like, you know, Brené Brown is incredible. I mean, even Gabby Bernstein, I think that she's really punchy as well, the way she talks about spirituality, but then just trying to do good in the world. I think that's really, so I love reading and listening to podcasts and all of that. Like, even you are so inspiring to me, Jo, like everything that you've been doing. And since listening to your podcast, I've learned so much more about your life, and that you lived on the land. And I just think that everyone has something to offer someone else in the world.
Yeah, they do. We've all got great stories, and sharing together can make a huge difference too. Emma, I'll have all of the things that you talked about, so that budget freebie that you've got for people, and then how they can connect with you on socials and your website and so forth. That'll all be in the show notes. But if you want to quickly tell people now where, you know, the handles and things that you've got.
Yeah, sure. So Instagram, it's at Emma Lagerlow. It's Lagerlow. Bit of a mouthful. And then my website at the moment is www.mamastay.com. And so there's links there to get on the wait list for my Wealth Mastery coaching program, or I've got a one-to-one signature program called become the butterfly. But there's also links in my bio. I'm on Facebook as well as Emma Lagerlow. So, but yeah, you'll put all those links in the show notes. But yeah, I'd love you to come and follow me and send me a DM or, send me an email. It'd be great.
Excellent. And Emma, what's one piece of advice that you would give to the 40+ woman? It could be on anything, wealth creation or anything to do with this stage of life. What would you say to her?
I think it maybe just comes back to that being kind to yourself. I think where we hold ourselves to, such high account of how we want to do our lives. And I think it's just about like talking to yourself like you would to a friend is so important at this juncture, that we need to just accept ourselves and be kind to ourselves as much as we possibly can, because we're with ourselves all the time. And if we're not speaking kindly to ourselves or we're thinking negatively, then that's the way we're going to show up. And so I think we need to really be kind to yourself as much as you possibly can, is really what it's about.
Perfect piece of advice. And our final question then, what would 80-year-old Emma say about current day Emma?
Keep going. I think that's what you would say is just, and I hope and good on you for keeping on going, because it was really worth it. I mean, sometimes you would know what it's like when you start a new business, and you just it's a roller coaster ride, and I think that it's about being persistent. And 80-year-old Emma would be really happy when I have clients that I'm still serving and helping, and maybe people are reading my books, and I have a really rich life, that she would say, good on you for doing all of that.
Beautiful. I'm sure she will. I'm sure she'll get that opportunity. Thanks so much for your time today, Emma. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, thank you, Jo. Thank you. I've loved this chat with you. It's been, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to say as well that I love your voice. It's so beautiful and calm and reassuring. And so I know that this podcast is going to grow with more people listening to your wisdom and how you come across. So thank you.
Well, I'll take those kind words. I'm learning not to try to deflect them. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.